We're the only country in the world that does this with birthright.
Since Donald Trump took office on January 20, 2025, his hardline immigration policies have reshaped the dynamics at the U.S. Mexico border. On one hand, illegal border crossings into the United States have plummeted. On the other, thousands of migrants are now crowding Mexico's border regions, trapped in limbo and uncertainty. This phenomenon, described as a blanket of migrants covering the Mexican border, reflects a dramatic shift in migration patterns under the pressure of Trump's crackdown. According to the latest data from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, arrests for illegal border crossings at the southern border in February 2025 totaled just 8,500 cases. This marks the lowest figure in at least 25 years. A stark contrast to the 141,000 arrests recorded in February 2024 under the Biden administration. Trump officials, including Vice President J.D. Vance and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, have hailed this as a triumph of the president's whole-of-government approach. During a visit to Eagle Pass, Texas, on March 5, 2025, Vance emphasized that Trump had directed every federal agency to prioritize immigration enforcement, a focus he claimed was absent under Biden. The Trump administration wasted no time implementing sweeping measures. One of its first acts was an executive order banning asylum applications at the southern border, effectively ending humanitarian programs like CBP-1 that Biden had used to grant entry to migrants. Additionally, Trump deployed thousands of troops to the border, bolstering patrols and surveillance. These steps, he argued, were essential to halt what he called an invasion of illegal migrants. While the U.S. border has grown unusually quiet, Mexico is witnessing a surge of stranded migrants. The International Organization for Migration reports that requests for assistance to return home from Mexico have skyrocketed since Trump's inauguration. Many migrants who once hoped to cross into the U.S. are now abandoning their plans, opting to stay in Mexico or return to their countries of origin. Tent camps and shelters in border cities like Ciudad Juárez, Tijuana, and Naucalpan de Juárez are overflowing with people from Central America, Venezuela, and even India. In Ciudad Juárez, a shelter with a capacity of over 500 was nearly empty by late February 2025, however, it has since swelled beyond capacity. Migrants like Eduardo Medina, a father of three from Michoacán, told CBS News he had waited months to apply for legal entry through the CBP-1 app. When Trump scrapped the program shortly after taking office, Medina's American dream evaporated. Now, he faces a tough choice: remain in Mexico under dire conditions or risk returning to the violence and poverty he fled. Trump's policies aren't just affecting migrants, they're also pushing neighboring countries to tighten controls. Mexico, led by President Claudia Sheinbaum, had already ramped up efforts to block migrants from reaching the U.S. border in 2024. But with Trump's new measures, the pressure has intensified. Trump has threatened a 25% tariff on Mexican goods if the country doesn't do more to stop migration and drug trafficking, particularly fentanyl. This leaves Mexico in a bind. It must manage a growing population of stranded migrants while meeting U.S. demands to avoid economic fallout. As a result, asylum applications in Mexico have surged. The Mexican Refugee Agency reports that recent weeks have seen an unprecedented spike in requests, as thousands of migrants deported from the U.S. or blocked from reaching the border turn to Mexico for protection. Humberto Briceño, a 39-year-old Venezuelan, is one such case. He told the Los Angeles Times that after Trump shut down the U.S. asylum system, he had no choice but to seek refuge in Mexico, despite harsh living conditions and risks of discrimination and violence. Trump's tough stance has sparked controversy. Human rights groups argue that banning asylum at the U.S. border violates international and U.S. law, which guarantees the right to seek asylum for those fleeing violence and persecution. Attorneys worry that in his rush to end illegal immigration, Trump is also denying legitimate asylum seekers, like JC, a Mexican businessman escaping cartel violence, or Maria, a woman fleeing an abusive husband. Both are now stuck at the border with no way forward. Supporters of Trump, however, see these measures as restoring integrity to the U.S. immigration system. They contend that the previous asylum framework was exploited by human traffickers and economic migrants who didn't qualify, leading to an overwhelmed border. Shutting down legal pathways, they say, is the only way to stop the massive influx that plagued the U.S. in prior years. Though illegal crossings have dropped, experts warn the situation could shift. The buildup of migrants along Mexico's border creates opportunities for smuggling networks to exploit. Some criminal groups have already adapted, using tactics like mimicking U.S. Border Patrol vehicles to evade controls. Moreover, if Trump follows through on his pledge to deport millions of undocumented immigrants from the U.S. Mexico could face an influx of returnees, straining its infrastructure and asylum system beyond capacity. Additionally, closing legal pathways may drive migrants to riskier routes. With no option to turn themselves in for asylum, some may attempt treacherous crossings through deserts or rivers to enter undetected. This not only raises the likelihood of deaths, but could also complicate border security in the long run. Mexico's border is now the epicenter of a new migration crisis, not from people flooding into the U.S., but from thousands trapped in desperation. Trump's immigration crackdown has succeeded in slashing illegal crossings, yet it comes at the cost of chaos and suffering south of the border. While Trump touts victory, the question remains whether this blanket of migrants can be addressed humanely or will persist as an open wound between the two nations. The situation continues to evolve, and the world watches for Trump's next moves.
Including recently,
it was immediate. As soon as Donald Trump became president,
a record number from China.
the US's online asylum system suspended.
Since January, border
Migrants waiting for their appointment found it cancelled. We're just looking at the mess.
crushed by China's weak economy, repression, and corruption.
Message that appeared through the app here through Ulysses. It says existing appointments scheduled through
And he's got video of what he says are thugs sent to beat them up.
CBP1 are no longer valid. So
At the border,
he was shell-shocked.
American volunteers help out the new arrivals.
Nosotros vendimos la casa y vendimos.
And here we have this giant mass of Asians coming in saying,
That was just day one. By Wednesday, there was more.
It's just really, really risky.
Troops deploying to the border, obstacles being built,
People warning people
and an executive order which the White House said
don't come this way.
defining undocumented migrants as invaders
On the U.S. border, more and more
means US officials don't have to offer them asylum.
have found the cash to gamble on a new life, even though Attorney Wang says
They can simply put them out. The inflammatory language,
about 30% will be deported. But
the sound of a door slamming shut.
a surge of people with their hope
The question for foreign migrants
is to have left China far behind.
is now in limbo in North Mexico. What next?
From parts of Mexico that have a lot.
They're able to do it all with information, maps, and advice.
That country's president offered repatriation.
And then deporting them if they are here illegally. Or
The shelters that now house them might soon be needed for Mexicans.
Say they aren't paying smugglers,
if they fail in their claim for asylum or other protection, we are
illegally crossing the Mexico-U.S. border.
President Trump's also planning mass deportations.
A lot of gang violence. I think
To make it to the border and into America.
And more than 40% of undocumented people in the US are Mexican.
Kevin told us about his journey that took several weeks.
detaining them as the law requires when they get in.
The country could see an influx of its citizens heading home.
By plane, bus, boat, and motorcycle.
In Boston, federal agents taking this man into custody.
Through treacherous jungles in the Darien Gap before ending on foot.
A group of around 70 arrived on Tuesday night in Tijuana.
And the migrants we've met, including Kevin,
Along with planes and helicopters,
Among them farm workers who said they'd been picked up from the fields.
nations of undocumented immigrants.
What do you think of Trump, they were asked. He's really doing a lot of damage to hard-working people like us, one replied.
After declaring a national
They're likely to be just the vanguard of many more. John Holman, Al Jazeera, Tijuana.
emergency at the southern border, the first of 1,500 active duty troops
As President Trump plans for one-way traffic coming across this border.
are set to arrive in a show of force.
La propia prisión. Pero esta fue solo su primera.
In the surge of migrants